one of the things that's a common perception when I'm out talking to IFAs is that the rules that you are talking about are primarily an EU thing. And with Brexit looming large, surely this isn't going to affect them. And, therefore it'd be really useful to get your sense as to what the UK government and the FCA, more importantly, are thinking about this and the likelihood of them adopting and implementing.
I think it's a really important question, and it's something that we're working through at the moment. So I think there's a number of aspects to this that will inform how we can understand this and how we should engage with it going forward. First of all, we saw in July 2019 that the UK government explicitly said it would match the level of ambition set out in the EU Sustainable Finance Plan from 2018. So we know that they want to hit that bar, if not exceed it. So in terms of ambition, this is certainly something that the UK is committed to. We don't want to move away from being a leader in sustainable finance. I think what we're seeing more recently is that there is perhaps opportunity to deviate on some level of detail. Perhaps we are aligned in terms of the principles that are being applied, in terms of the importance of bringing transparency to this space, but perhaps in terms of the flexibility given to firms and how they show that may be where we can deviate and continue to bolster UK competitiveness in this area.
The IA label that you talked about, and I know you said it's in development, but how do you see that in practice? Do you see that being almost like a kite mark? Or is it more a generic indication that the fund is, I don't know, an impact or an exclusion? How do you see that sort of taking form?
It all really began with looking at, should there be a social impact sector? That was where it began. Then that moved into, okay, well, is it really only social impact that we want to be flagging? Actually, in the first instance, isn't there an appetite for broader sustainability to be flagged? Then there were questions around, okay, well, actually, do managers really want their products to be sitting separately? Actually, don't they want them to be competing with others within that asset class, but just such that you have the visibility that it is a sustainable product? So then it moved from a separate sector to perhaps maybe this is a flag or a kite mark, as you say, Steve, that sits across. I think increasingly that is looking to be more likely because, again, we spoke at the very beginning around how this is growing, how this is becoming the norm. I don't think we want to be having it quite so separate as a sort of separate sector, and that's where sort of current thinking is.
There is still a lot of creases, for want of a better expression, to be ironed out in terms of the regulations. Do you have any sense of the timeline?
This March deadline is all about having these firm level policies in place for sustainability risks and adverse impacts as the key piece. And then effectively later on, there's other aspects from SFDR that will come into place from Sustainable Finance Exposure Regulation. For example, from June to 2021, larger firms will no longer be able to only have comply or explain in terms of how they deal with adverse impacts. They will have to have their policy in relation to how they manage adverse impacts. So that's quite a key piece from June. And then from December 2022, we'd also be seeing principal adverse impacts being disclosed at a product level. So effectively, we've got our March one, and then there's a number of other pieces that come in a little bit later.
The adverse impact sort of disclosure.
Yeah.
What to the layman does that mean? Does that mean funds would have to disclose if they were investing in the likes of, I don't know, fossil fuels, tobacco to a greater extent than they currently do? How would you see that taking part, or is that still to be defined?
We also saw in April from the European supervisory authorities, which is, for example, ESMA, so sort of European version of FCA, is how do we do this in practice? And as you say, Steve, more examples of what this might look like. So they put forward 32 mandatory indicators across environmental, social considerations. And the thing is, I think these are helpful for seeing where the EU authorities are thinking, and they do include carbon intensity, use of water, etc. But what we have seen from industry is that actually this level of prescriptiveness may not be that helpful in terms of firms really identifying and prioritizing what they consider to be the principal adverse impacts. So in short, it's an ongoing conversation around what could be genuinely meaningful and helpful.